I have started the recording. Welcome to today's session. We are continuing to go through the Emacs manual, and today I want to start with the mark and region chapter, which is number 11. So we are continuing to use Thomas's manual generated in HTML format. Let me paste the link to you. So if you go to emacsdocs.org, we've covered a lot of ground here, and today we're going to do the mark and region. We're going to start with the introduction. Let me paste the link in the chat so you can follow along. Good. So again, I have running the keys program, so you'll be able to see the commands that I am typing on the top. I will use the Emacs in the terminal for today's session. So let's cover the mark and region today. So you can mark a specific region of text, right? You mark it at one end and you move the point to the other end, and this text between the point and mark is called the region. Okay, so let me start Emacs here. So we have the GNU Emacs buffer here. So you set the mark at a position and you activate it. When the mark is active, we say that the region is active. Okay, and this is indicated by a text which is highlighted using the region face, and you can specify to only highlight only the text. You could set this attribute to nil here as well. Of course, some non-motion commands can also be used while you do changes in the text buffer, and then Emacs will automatically deactivate the mark. Okay. At any time, you can always press Ctrl G to deactivate the mark, right? So we already seen this command of Ctrl G to deactivate this. So this behavior of marking, moving the cursor forward, and then setting the point is known as the transient mark mode. So if you disable this, the region is usually not highlighted. So you will see how to do this. Now, one important variable to remember here is highlight non-selected windows to true, right? So you can have the mark in one buffer, but it will have no effect on the mark on the other buffers. Okay, so when you return to a buffer with an active mark, the mark is at the same place, and if you have multiple windows showing the same buffer, they can have different values of points and thus different regions. Okay, but they all share the one common mark position. So let's go through this and how to use this. So the way to set the mark is using Control space. Okay, you can also do Control @ symbol. This will run set mark command. Right, so let's do that. So I am scrolling down. Let's say I've come to this line, GNU Emacs 27.1. I press Control space. I do Control F. You see that the text is getting highlighted, right? And now if I want to switch between the point and the mark, I can press Control X, Control X. This switches between the mark and the point. And this is how you sort of select a region. Of course, you can use mouse 1, mouse 3. I'm not going to do that because I want you to learn to use the actual keyboard commands. There is also option to use shift. There is a separate section on shift. We will go through that later. So, the shift cursor motion keys, it will set the mark at the point if the mark is inactive, and then it will move the point. So, let us try that at the shift selection section. Now, one example given here is if you want to convert a part of the buffer to uppercase, right. So, let us try that. So, what it says is, say I go to copyright, control space, control F, control X, control U, but this is a read only buffer, so I cannot change this here. So, let me go to a scratch buffer, right. Let us just type a sentence here to try it out. So, I say control space to mark, move forward, right, control X, control U. So, it makes it as all caps. So, you are converting it into uppercase letter here. Of course, anytime you can deactivate it using control G. Most commands that operate in this region will automatically deactivate the mark once you are done. So, in this example here, the control X, control U basically will deactivate the marked region once the command is executed. This is what we see here. Of course, whatever I explained here regarding control X is basically runs exchange point and mark, which you have already seen in the GNU Emacs buffer. So, this is explained here. Now, you can also do shift by holding down the shift key while typing certain cursor mode commands. So, I can do shift right, it will also highlight. The idea here is that we want to use control space and then use Emacs shortcuts to move back and forward and backward and forward, right. Okay. And you can also use shift control F, shift control N, and so on. This is called as shift selection. It sets the mark at a point before moving the point, only if there is no active mark set via previous shift selection or mouse commands. Okay. Of course, many commands that insert text such as control Y will set the mark at the other end of the inserted text without activating it. So, later on we will see regarding the markering as well. So, every time when you are using the X11 interface, Emacs will save the text in the region to the primary selection when the region is activated. Okay. Now, you can also remember a position in the buffer by typing control space and later jump to that space back by using control U, control space. Okay. This is given here. Let us try this. So, let us say I am at mark and I do control space and move forward, control U, control space, it goes back to the mark place, right. So, that is what is remembering a position in a buffer. Okay, that is the basic commands for doing marking and moving the cursor and activating the region. Okay. Let us go to the next section, commands to mark textual objects. Now, there are some additional commands for placing the point and the mark around a textual object such as a word, list, paragraph or a page. So, let us go back to the Emacs buffer here. So if I go to this line and I do alt at, so this sets the mark at the end of the next word, but it does not move the point. Okay, so I'm at capital G here, I do alt at, it marks the entire word. Welcome YRPSA, thanks for joining in. Feel free to ask any questions you have. We're just going through the mark and region chapter, and here we are seeing how to use alt at to mark the next word. Okay, now you can repeat these invocations to extend further, right? I press Control G to, so if I do like Control U phi alt at, it will highlight the next 5 words, right? So you can have prefixes there. Now you can set mark after the end of a balanced expression, S expression. So use Control Alt and at. So if I do Control Alt at, right? Let's do here. So here we don't have any code here, but when you have multiple S expressions, it will be able to select that. Now you can point to the beginning of the current paragraph and set the mark. So this runs mark paragraph. So I say Alt H, it selects the entire paragraph, it highlights that. Right. You can move the point to the beginning of a diff and set the mark at the end. So if you have like Emacs Lisp code, you can do that. So it's Control Alt H. So this is a Lisp sort of code here with an open and close parenthesis, so it highlights that, right? You can keep repeating this again, it will select the next S expression list and it will highlight that. You can select the entire page, right? Control X, Control P, that's the entire page. So you can select the whole thing and it's highlighted. If you want the whole buffer, you can do Control X H, right? So it will select the entire buffer. So there are some very good shortcut commands that you can use to not just use the navigation commands, but also to select words, paragraphs, Lisp expressions, pages, and the entire buffer. That is explained actually in these paragraphs here. All right, let's look at what you can do once you have highlighted the text, and you can basically kill it. So let me go back to the Scratch buffer because the Emacs buffer is a read-only buffer. So let's say I mark this, I can do Control W, it will kill it. Killing means it will also put it into a kill ring buffer. So you can basically yank it back, just paste it back. So do Control Y, it will paste it from the kill ring buffer. You can copy it, selecting this. If I do Alt W, I'm just copying this, right? I can go down, I can say Control Y to paste it, that will work. We've already seen converting the case to lower or upper case. So let's say I go here, right? Control X, Control U, it makes it as all uppercase. I can undo the change, Control U, Control / it is given here. You can do query replace, right? Alt. Once you select a region, you can do Alt %. So to say what query to be replaced in the region, so you can replace that as well. You can fill it with the text, maybe with alt text fill region. You can do spell check. So I do Alt $. So there's default dictionary using ASPEL, which you should have installed on your system. So it will basically run it, go through all the word list and check for any spelling mistakes. We'll look at spelling dictionary later on, but there are things that you can do in a region. If you have a Lisp expression, Lisp code, you can evaluate the region or text eval region. You can save it to a register, Control X RS, or you can actually save it to a different buffer or a file. So these are quite common things that you will want to do when you're working with text or code and so on. So it is quite useful things that you can do when you are operating on a region. So if you want the commands to operate on an empty region, you can change the variable use empty active region to true, which is given here, right? Some important variables to be aware of. If you change the variable delete active region to nil, right, then these commands don't act differently when the mark is active. So if you change the value to kill, these commands will just kill the region instead of deleting it. So that's what I said, when you do kill, it basically goes to the kill ring buffer. So the other commands we have already seen, like in like saving to register, saving to file and so on. Now most of the commands have the word region in their names, like kill region, uppercase region, so they actually work on the region. If the mark is inactive, they operate on the inactive region. There is a text between the point and the position where the mark was last set. So to disable this behavior, you have to change this mark even if inactive to nil. Of course, these commands will then signal an error if the mark is inactive. Like you need to apply these commands when the region is active. Now there is a delete selection mode which can be turned on or off using the all text delete selection mode. So by default what happens is text occurs normally if the mark is active, so you can actually type characters when the region is selected and then it will deactivate the mark. So it is this delete selection mode is a minor mode. Okay. But if you enable this mode, the inserting text while the mark is active will causes the text in the region to be deleted. So if I select something like this and I type something like A, now here it actually doesn't delete the highlighted text, it actually adds to that, right. So in this particular delete selection mode, it will actually delete the text and it will overwrite the change. So depending on what you are doing, you can toggle this minor mode. Good. Let's go on to the mark ring itself. So each buffer remembers the previous location of the mark in the mark ring, right. Commands that set the mark will push this mark position to a ring, something like a ring buffer. And one of the uses of the mark ring is to remember the spots that you want to go back, right. So to set the mark and to push it to the mark ring without activating it, you need to do control space space. Okay. So say I am here at point, I do control space space. So this will set the mark, push it into a mark ring, right. And if you want to restore, right, the point where the mark is, you hit control U, control space. So it goes back to the previous mark ring location. Okay, that's what is given here. So it is like the kill ring, but you can have multiple mark positions in a buffer or file. Right. Alright. One important point to note here is if you set the set mark command repeat pop to true, immediately after you type control U space, you can type control space instead of control U control space to cycle through the mark ring. So by default, this set mark command repeat pop is nil. ORPSA asks is, have you already went over rectangles? Not yet actually, I think it's coming next a bit later. So let me see where it is. We'll come to that. There's also ASCII mode, right? You can do drawing and stuff. So I've not covered rectangles yet. But this does mention that there is another kind of region, the rectangular region. You can do selection there. It's a good question. So right now what I'm doing is I'm going through the manual, but at the same time I'm trying to like show some commands to demonstrate it. So the idea is that you should watch the video and you try out these commands. I also have the quick reference notes in the GitHub repo, so you can quickly try out those commands. And if there are some missing topics, do let me know and we'll go through that, and I'll try to demonstrate some of these key commands. So right now I have not done any customization, it's just vanilla Emacs that's installed on Ubuntu, and I'm just using it as is. So idea here is to go through as many commands as possible from the manual, and then later on we will look at customization and how to use these variables and so on. And I'm open to new ideas as well. Yeah, org mode is coming up, you're right. So the plan I had is, if you look at Emacs docs, let me open this page. So Thomas has actually converted all of these manuals to HTML, which is readable in the browser. So I want to finish Emacs manual, and then maybe I will do Magit or Magit, however you want to call it. That's kind of useful and one of the nice features with Emacs. And we can do org manual, and then I also want to go through eLisp. People want to write their own packages, want to do customization. So that's the long-term plan that I have, but we'll do it one step at a time. I'm also making these videos available on YouTube, so you can also watch it asynchronously as well. So, but very good session. I think you're on the right track, and we'll continue going through these manuals. Maybe even we can pick up some of those Emacs issues and try doing some live coding as well. That will be nice to do, and maybe I can do pair programming sessions or invite other people to join the Twitch stream, and you can do some nice live coding sessions. Yeah, keep the suggestions coming. I'm open to exploring more ways of getting the community involved. Alright, so we were just talking about the mark ring, and so the mark ring has a size limit, so that is given by the variable mark ring max, which specifies the maximum number of entries that you can keep in the mark ring. The default is 16 entries, but you can change it. Just as how you have a mark ring for each buffer, Emacs has a global mark ring as well. So anytime you set a mark, this is also recorded in the global mark ring in addition to the current buffers mark ring. Right? So if you switched buffers, for example, right? So the global mark ring has the sequence of buffers that you have already been in, and for each buffer it knows like where you set the mark. Again, there is a variable, you can control this. This is global mark ring max, and again here the default value is set to 16. Now the command control X control space, which basically runs pop global mark, will jump to the buffer and position of the latest entry in the global ring. So it again, it's a ring, so it also rotates the ring entries, so that as you do like control X control space, it will move to the earlier buffers and mark positions. Okay. Right. and we did go through shift selection. So if you hold down the shift key while typing a cursor motion command, this will set the mark before moving the point. So as I showed here, if I do shift and right arrow key, so this will actually do the selection, but I generally don't want to use the arrow keys. There is a Emacs extension or plugin called No Easy Keys. I actually use that in my Emacs setup, so that it basically will not allow you to use arrow keys. I would like to use Control F, Alt P, and so on. Right? We want to practice to use these commands, so it's much faster to navigate through the buffers and the files. But I'm just going through this because it's there in the manual. You can turn off shift selection by setting shift select mode to nil. Right now, if you want to try this, you can try this. This like shift CF will run the command actually instead of doing the forward character one. Right, so you do have commands you can work with shift and arrow keys. But I would encourage you to actually practice with the actual Emacs key binding, so that it's there in your muscle memory. You can of course do Control G anytime, right, to deactivate the mark. And the last section here is on disabling this transient mark mode. So while the transient mark mode is off, you can temporarily activate it using control space, right, or Control U, Control XX. Right. So setting the mark with commands Control space or Control XX does not highlight the region. Therefore, you can't tell looking where the mark is located. Right. Now, why is this important here? Right, is some commands might operate on the entire buffer instead of the region when the transient mark mode is off, but you want to temporarily enable the transient mark mode to use some of these commands in a specific region, right? And hence you can disable transient mark mode and then use it when you only want to, right? You can do Control U XX again. This will exchange the point and mark, activate the mark. It will enable the transient mark mode temporarily until the mark is next deactivated, either by you typing something or pressing Control G, for example. So this is also possible. Again, everything is customizable in Emacs. So I usually don't turn this off, always keep it, because you want to use this transient mark mode when you want to select code, you want to select text, you want to cut text, and so on, right? So this completes this section here on the mark and region chapter. In the next streaming session, we will go through killing and moving text, and here is what you asked for, the rectangles is there. So we can actually go through these rectangles in this next section, the next stream. So with that, let me stop the recording.